So here's what I do with the just trash wood. I think this is some sort of like western willow. They grow wild around here, and it was dead obviously, and the wood's just garbage. So if it was nicer, I would probably chip it up and use it like as kind of a mulch or bark chips. But when it's trash like that, it literally goes in the trash. And then these are lively oaks. I just cut a lot of these oak branches. The problem with oak, when it's young, it's really wiry and flexible. And when I've tried to chip that before, it tends to just go down in the chipper and rip around and get clogged up. It doesn't really chip. It doesn't even really shred. So I've been going around collecting a lot of the junk and just clearing it out of here because it's May 1st. And you can see it's starting to get a little more dry, like on the hills and stuff, which means we're coming into fire season. So all this is so dry and dead, this is absolutely a fire hazard. So kind of different if you're in the northwest or even the northeast. You know, it's kind of fine to leave this stuff out, but in California, I wouldn't do it. If it's not green, I would get rid of it. I would either chip it or trash it. So check this area out right here. My property line really ends right about there, but I get along really well with my neighbor, so I don't even really have to ask permission. But what I'm going to do is jump down in here and weed whack some of the mustard slow on them, because probably within about a month of the drier, hotter weather, those will die and become like brown, twiggy fire fuel, basically. So rather than let them get to that point, I'm just going to knock them out now. I've done it a couple times already this year, but we got a few later rainstorms, and it's like those things, as soon as it rains a little bit, boom, they're just exploding with growth. So I think I'm pretty safe to do those and not have to do it a fourth time. So that's one thing. I mean, this is pretty wild over there, and all that stuff would be really prone to burning in another few months. But we kind of have a deal where I keep this whole area clean, so that way it'll protect us in the case of a fire. What I'm doing in the meantime is this ice plant right here. I'm plugging these in and letting them grow down the slope. Eventually they'll look like this area. And those, even with I just checked this turtle out right here. I can't see him that good on camera. There's one over here too. See that guy? So way over there, that ice plant, let's go take a quick look. Ice plant's been my go-to. So yeah, check this stuff out. It's like, no matter how hot and dry, it's always wet. And you see I planted some here, and I'm trying to get it to grow down this slope too. But if you look at this stuff, you know, it gets very little to no water. Check this out. It's just dripping water out of it. It's always wet. So this is perfect for a fire break. And here I like it as a ground cover, but also I'm going to put it on these slopes in the case that some of this stuff ever burns. You know, it'll do a pretty good job of slowing the fire down. And as you can see, I got the pond pretty full. See this school of fish down in there. This is about the level I want to keep it at. I'm going to say I'm roughly about a foot, maybe just over a foot from full. So I'm going to keep this that level, because if in the unlikely and sad event that there is a fire nearby, they'll actually come pull water from this. And I don't mean with their truck. I mean literally with a helicopter. We had a neighbor down here. He had and when we had the big fire in the back in the national forest, they were flying right overhead right here with buckets of water to go back there. So I mean, in the case that there was a fire, I'm 100% confident they'd pull from here. This is 12 feet deep. So maybe right now it's 11, but more than enough water in here to fight off the fire. So keeping it clean and circulated, that's kind of a different video, but keeping it full for fire season is relevant. And then stuff like this, I prefer to trim the trees this way anyway, but I like to kind of keep them up off the ground. That one was right on the ground. That one's struggling. I'm trying to really get it to make a comeback, but it's actually up off the ground now. It's still a little wild over there. But but at least it's green and healthy. So if there's dead stuff, I'll cut that off. So that tree is struggling a little bit, but if the trees are literally dead, like what I was cleaning out back there, I'll take all the dead growth off. Everything you see right now is pretty much live. I've been trimming trees for a week straight, so I should be getting pretty caught up here. So anything that's dry and dead, get rid of it. The slope right here, I dealt with all those weeds about a month or so ago, and just weed whack it nice and short, and then I'll come through and spray it with Roundup or like your generic glyphosate, and then if you weed whack it first and you spray it, you're pretty much done. If you were to let them get big, tall weeds, a foot tall, like some of these mustard seeds are doing, if they get really big like that, then you spray them and they're still standing, it's a nightmare. So I'll give you an example of that. I mean, actually, I can give you an example of that right now. You look over here, not my property there. If a fire ever comes through, that stuff will be on fire. I've gone back into the national forest when it was on fire, and that stuff's just burning. I mean, the flames just run through that stuff, and it'll climb probably up the hill. That good bit of green right there is a good thing, but there's just too much dead vegetation on that hill to really be ideal. So that and those dead trees right there would have me concerned. So I can't control what's over there though. It's like I was saying, this ice plant I've got plugged in all along this slope in a few different spots, so that'll hopefully start spreading out here and act as a fire break. Let's take a notice at these queen palms. There's a few of them, some in the back, some down near the bottom. I went through and trimmed all those queen palms. So they're nice trees, but the fronds tend to get dry. So when they're brown and hanging down, as soon as the rain season stops, I'm gonna cut those right off, and especially with the proximity to the house, if those go up, they're gonna be trying to drop embers. And then right here has been kind of a work in progress, but we did have these type of sugar sumac trees all laid over. They were really growing from down there, but the branches were just laying on this hillside, and I cut them down. My wife was not a fan of that, because it gave some, some privacy here. But the problem was that if there ever was a fire, I feel like it would have ripped right up those things. And these are still pretty flammable trees, even though they're green and lively. So I wouldn't have those very close to the house. And instead, I put this whole slope of ice plant. And then, check this out. Pretty similar here, some ice plants, some wildflowers, keeping this nice and wet. I got these trimmed way up off the ground. I could probably use a little more attention on that oak right there. Trimmed that. And then what I did this year that's a little different, a very small 1/8 inch mesh over all those dormer vents. And then you can already see the eaves are all closed up here. So I'm gonna say we're about as good as we can go on the design of the house. I'm just gonna take care of the landscape a little bit more with that oak. And we do have some exposed wood, and it's never really bothered me because it's really on the concrete area. This would be kind of a concern otherwise. And then this is less of a concern because realistically, if it's going up this way, it's kind of going to be leaving. But at the same time, I'm keeping this all very wet and getting a lot of growth and keeping the growth green year round in there. So this is looking better. All right, so I came up to the top of my stairs. It's like one of the higher points of the property, because I want to show you some perspective. This guy has got a pretty fire resistant setup. So if you look, he's got everything cleared out to the street. All around the house is clear, and back here is not. And we kind of have an agreement. We're not going to mess with this. It's actually his property, but I don't really want him to mess with it because it looks pretty good. It stays relatively green, and in the event we did have a fire, that wouldn't really affect either of us. So we're going to leave it because it's not in a bad spot. Interestingly enough, there's my neighbor down there. He's watering some of his stuff. So he's a civil engineer. He pretty much knows what's going on. He knows what to do. He's been around a little while. Now compare that to over here. This house I would be more concerned about. It's actually better than it was, but if you look, that tree is more or less dead. There's a few trees over here, like that tall one, center screen, totally dead. There's a bunch of dead, dry, no growth trees just sitting there. Some of them cut down on the ground. I would be very concerned with that because the fires that I have seen, you know, if they get on the bottom of a slope, they climb the slope really fast. And I would especially be concerned because you can see there's a palm right there that looks like it's a little unkempt. That you see the dead fronds hanging down, and they're practically touching the roof. So I wouldn't be real comfortable with that. And the thing is, when these fires come through, they move fast, and to get all that stuff cleaned up, you can't say, oh, there's a fire, let me go start cleaning. I've already spent 2 weeks, you know, really cleaning the property up for just this year, starting with the weeds and weed whacking and trimming the trees and cleaning stuff up. So you have to do it really before the fire season starts. You might find yourself kind of in a jam. Like right here, this is probably safe. Because, you know, this stuff is the natural sagebrush. It would rip right up this in a heartbeat. But what's it going to do? It's going to burn a steel gazebo. You know, it's not... I'm going to leave this exactly as it is because it's no danger to me. Then, if you look over here, you know, some of these trees are pretty dry. A lot of this brush over here is pretty dry. This other neighbor has got relatively good setup. You know, if it marches up this way, he's probably pretty safe. It doesn't typically come down all that fast. He's got a decent fire break. Can't see all that well. But right here, you notice, I'm sure you can hear whipping, and it's blowing straight towards us. So in the event that a fire starts over here, it's going to move this way quickly. The wind here is usually pretty strong. So, I mean, a lot of this stuff would be getting lit up quick. Definitely quick. This is more of a concern. There's one more house back this way, so it'd be more of a concern for them. But they don't, you know, they're not worried about it, so I'm not worried about it. But if I were them, I would probably have more of a fire break here. I'm not going to do anything with any of this. I'm going to leave it just as is because I like it. And that's sort of the problem is if you really want to have it be the safest you can with a property like this. Bare, barren, scraped to the dirt, clean, but scraped to the dirt. And I really don't like the dirt look. I gotta say, I'm not a fan of the dirt look. You can see a lot of these houses and properties down here are dirt. This one's got a lot more trees. This guy up here has got a lot more trees. I drastically prefer that look, but that's not as ideal. So I'm trying to come with a little bit of a balance between what I actually like and what is safe. So check something else out. Next stop, the big fire tank. So this is 5,000 gallons. This indicates it's full. It's actually kind of backwards of what you'd expect. If it was empty, the red marker would be up here. It's basically got 7 feet of water in it. So you figure it's full to about here. That's going to be close to 5,000 gallons, maybe 4,500 or so. But what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to open up a valve. I can do it a couple different ways, but if I close a couple valves right here, can be a drain, or what I can do is hook this to a fire hose, and then if I open this valve and I leave this valve open, it makes it a full connected to the water main fire hose. So I've got 300 feet of fire hose and a fire hose nozzle. So if there's anything I can do safely, I can do, you know, a little bit to help with some firefighting or at least wetting the area. And then what I'm going to do is either drain some out of there, or I can even drain some right out of here, out of the big 6-inch fitting that's here for the fire department. I'll drain some down, and then I'll come over here to this pipe, which is the fill pipe, and I'll make sure the automatic fill device is working. I usually do that a couple times a year just to make sure I know what I got. Last thing I would want is something to happen and they show up and they hook their truck up to this and they start sucking from this tank to go to their big, pump engine attached to the truck so that they can, fight fire here, and this thing is not filling itself. What I did additionally, it's not really preparing for fire, but in the case that I knew that they were going to be coming to hook up for this, what I can actually do is leave this valve open, leave that valve closed, and open up this valve, which I guess I might as well close. And I could actually have this bottom fed by the full inch and a half main. So 1 inch main is 1 inch fill line is what's required and designed with the auto fill valve. But I also punched this in the bottom to do a rapid fill, just so they can have more volume. So another cool thing, and as you can see, all this is wild. I mean, this is more of a concern of where the fire would come from, but at least it's downhill, and with the water and everything here and this wide driveway that's more or less at the perimeter of the property, I think it's about as safe as it's gonna get. Right here, for looks and also because it's fire-wise, I've been planting the ice plant. That ice plant that stays nice and wet starts over here, goes all the way around the hill to the house. I definitely want very, very fire-resistant stuff where that flame could try to creep up. And similar over here, the front side of the hill is a little more bushy wild, partially just because it would need more and more irrigation, and I kind of wanted to leave it a little more natural. But if you look, big fire breaks down here, and we'll go around to the backside. Yes, I've been trimming a lot of these trees, just getting them up off the ground, and that's a big pile of branches. That's my literal next trip. I'll be loading that in the back of this, and I'm going to be bringing it to my staging area, which we're going to right now. Alright, so check this out, and I've actually already chipped up some piles of this, but all these branches I've trimmed over the past week. You can see that now that they've been trimmed, they're dying. These, and there's this lizard hiding in there, luckily not a rattlesnake. These need to go immediately. So today I'm going to trim the last few trees. I'm going to load them up into there. I'm going to bring them over here. This, for example, is a perfect one to chip up. It's long. It's gonna save me a lot of space in the dumpster. The little shrubby trash, by the time I chip everything up, I'll probably see a pile like this, small little twigs. If it won't go in the top feeder of the chipper, I might load those up and take them to the dumpster next round. So all this stuff is going to be done within a few days. The dumpster pickup day is Thursday, so worst case, whatever's left over will be in the dumpster on Thursday. So using this chipper, whatever I feed into there will become these bark chips, and then those bark chips I'll reuse at the base of the trees, because base of the trees are going to be pretty wet. I probably wouldn't take bark like that and put it somewhere like here. I don't think that's going to be very good for fire. Quite confident. And additionally, these types of trees are not the best, but you'll notice everything going more towards the structure is cleaner. That's about as close as I would go, that tree there. But we really like the tree. It's big, it's beautiful, it's healthy, it's green. So we're going to leave those. But when we built this place, the fire inspector was a little concerned about that. Although, we talked about it, he was just like, make sure you keep it trimmed. And it was better because, look, if the fire is there, this road is the fire break. So at least, this isn't bridging that fire to potentially this catching on fire, to potentially this catching on fire. So we're going to keep it. Then if you look, there's miles of national forest, and that's typically exactly where a fire would start. This lady here knows what she's doing. She's been around. She's one of the first people to build here, and she does kind of what the people who built our place did 30 years ago. They put an access road more or less around the perimeter of the property, which doubles as a fire break. So they can not only access her 30-acre avocado grove using that dirt road, but in the case there was fire, firefighters could bring their equipment. Even a bulldozer or something could go through there. And when we had our fire back 4 years ago now, none of this was built. This was just a mound, and they actually had a fire right on the hill here, and the dozers were down the street. But if they did need to bring in dozers, they could bring a dozer in and they could bring it right up the driveway and they can unload it right here. And I got a pretty easy sale for them because it's clean, it's accessible, it's, there's good water here, the pond is here. I would say and we're also backed right up to the National Forest, so if I were the fire captain, I would probably pick this as maybe one of the #1 places to have stuff, and that's exactly what I want. If there is a major fire, I want them here. So obviously they're gonna be looking to protect themselves, which also means they're gonna protect the structures. Let me show you something from upstairs. And check this out. I'm not in love with this landscape, but look, there's a nice break here, and all this stuff is nice and wet and well irrigated, and so less than ideal to have it coming up this slope, but that's why we left a nice good break right here. And I wouldn't let this stuff dry out, which is why I've run irrigation lines here. And so we keep this stuff wet and we keep the trees clean. All these trees are trimmed up pretty high. So that's about the best we can do without making this a bare dirt mound. So, and in this new construction, they got the benefit of the fire sprinklers, which our original house does not. But we're gonna hope we never have to have those activated anyway. So hers is a little concerning, but she keeps her avocados healthy. You hear, I'm sure, the wind whipping up here. It's very normal. I'm gonna tell you though, of everybody, and this neighbor is not my favorite. I'm gonna try to be shielded by the wall here. This is a bit of a problem. Big, huge piles of brush, and it's not new. It's not like new green growth. This is a couple years worth of stuff. So if a fire were to come through, that would be a big problem. I feel like those piles could make enough heat to even catch live avocado trees on fire. So that place is a nightmare. She also has a pond down here that she pumps dry. She doesn't want the wildlife. I would have the pond full, and I would have all these branches clear. And this is the same one with a lot of the dead trees and stuff in front. She's really just not able to make stuff happen. She's a little older, and there's a lot of issues there. But you don't want this to be you, because when the few times we've had fires that are kind of close, I just see her frantically running around, freaking out, a lot of anxiety. She knows if the fire makes it to this property, the fire department's just probably going to walk away. And so when they came to do this inspection, they actually looked at that, and they're kind of like, you need to clean your area up. And I said, no, that's not mine. I can't. I don't own that property. And so I had to walk them around and show them the property boundaries. And then they even had an issue with over here, and you'll see, there's enough space from the balcony to the branches. I probably would say it's a little close, but I wouldn't let it get any closer, that's for sure. They even looked back here and they said, you know what, you need to scrub all this off. You need to clear that out. But the property markers, the way the property's shaped, actually the property line is really only here, and it goes back to this corner and then across. So I had to explain to him that, that's not, I don't have any way to do that, and the people aren't particularly approachable. So I was able to negotiate, hey, look, you got a 20-foot fire break right here, and I also keep a tractor. So he was able to sign us off, but he still expressed some concern about this stuff. I have no irrigation there. I can't irrigate what's not mine. So this stuff gets a little bit dry, and I'll show you my last secret weapon. Well, almost. Check this out real quick. This was built as a deck, but you notice it's totally tight stuccoed, and that's a fireproof vent right there that was specifically made. Same with some of the eave vents. It's all fireproof construction. And P.S. Same with the windows. So if for some reason fire was right outside of these windows are strengthened extra because what happens, the fire makes a lot of heat and it creates a high pressure. And in here there's cold, so it makes a low pressure and it tends to blow the windows out and actually suck the flames in. So these are, every window in the entire place is specific fire requirements. And check this baby out. Now I'm thinking about letting this one go and getting another one, but I do really need to keep equipment here because if it really all gets out of hand and I know the fire is going to come to that area I was just showing you in the back, I could jump in this thing and head out there and just start plowing the dirt and plowing the weeds and plowing the dirt, and I could push back, another 50 feet within about a half an hour. So the one time we did have the big fire, it was kind of coming over this ridge right here. If I were to see that again, I'd fire that tractor up and I would start plowing that stuff backwards with that box blade or with the loader on the front. And I'm sure the neighbors who own that would have a fit, but I'm very confident that there's not really much they could do. And I like the greenery. It looks good. The wildlife comes in. We see birds and quail and all kinds of coyotes and rabbits and whatnot. So I do want to keep it, but in the case of absolute emergency, that tractor would push this stuff back quick, like right away. So with that, hopefully it helps to explain what you would do or maybe should do ideally to get ready for the fire season. And hopefully the fire season's uneventful.